Hey guys, welcome to today's video on 5 mistakes that you'll make as a beginner photographer and how you can fix them. The first mistake I see lots of beginner photographers make is they spend way too much of their attention focusing on the subject of their photograph. By that, I mean that they ignore everything else that goes into making up their picture. You've got to remember that your composition is everything that goes into the photo, not just the subject. So if you're photographing a church, or a person, or an animal, you need to remember that the background, the timing, the colour and the light all come together to accentuating your subject. And only when you pay attention to all of those elements will you create a brilliant photograph. Now, this is an obvious example where we've cut the person's legs off. This often happens for beginner photographers because they're focusing on the powerful, the impactful, the colourful part of their photograph, which is often the subject. Now, first thing you've got to remember is keep all the limbs in if that's something that you want to do with your photo. If you're not shooting a headshot or a body up, make sure that you're shooting with purpose. Now, if we zoom all the way out, you can see everything that can go into this photo. We've incorporated the London Eye in the background and it's really made all the colours pop. And I only came up with this picture because I considered everything that was in front of me, not just the model. Now, mistake number 2 is something I see all the time, and that's not keeping your horizon lines level. It's something really easy to fix, and it makes a really big change from making your picture look slightly amateurish to looking a bit more professional. It adds a certain polish and care to your picture that shows that you were paying attention when you took it. And it also does a lot for a landscape picture. It's really obvious to your eye when the lines are slightly off. Now, you can obviously adjust it in post-production by cropping. You can change the angle to fix it. Now, that's a good thing to do afterwards if you haven't quite got it right in camera. But in camera is also very easy to do as long as you're paying attention. You can use tools like the grid, and some cameras even have a little level inside of them that will help you make sure that you're keeping your horizons level and your verticals level. Mistake number 3 is people zooming when they can move. Use your feet. Don't be the lazy photographer. Just because you've got the zoom function on your camera doesn't mean that you need to use it. Whereas in reality, walking instead of zooming will often result in a better picture. This is because as you're walking to where you're going to take your picture from, you'll be thinking about your photograph. And just the act of thinking is going to improve your composition. It's going to change the way that you see subjects in your scene, the way you place objects in your scene. And in reality, it's going to improve you as a photographer. So there's one reason I always recommend people get a prime lens instead of a zoom lens when they're learning photography, is because it forces them to use their feet. They don't have the option to zoom, and therefore they're going to become a better photographer because of it. Lots of photographers say that the best piece of equipment they've ever invested in is a good pair of shoes, and they don't say that lightly because it's just going to make you better at what you do. Now, mistake number 4, and it's a big one. Getting sharp photographs is so important. If you find that you're getting blurred or unsharp images, listen to these 3 things that are going to help you with that. So the first thing to check is that you're actually getting accurate focus. My biggest suggestion is using single point focus. And it's much like using an iPhone where you tap on the screen to check where you're focusing. Within your camera, you can select which focus point you're going to use at a given time, making sure that the focus point you're using is over the main area of your subject, so that when you focus, it's focusing on the right area of the picture. That's really important, especially when photographing people, that for example, the focus point is over the person's eye. This will make sure that the eyes are in focus, with the eyes being the most important part of the image, and therefore a sharp and effective image throughout. The second thing to check is your aperture. Now, your aperture controls the depth of field within your camera. This is really important to understand because different images require different depths of field. So you can see in this scene behind me now, I've got a shallowish depth of field because things are blurred out behind me. Whereas in a landscape photograph, you'll be looking for a deep depth of field in order to have front to back focus. So next time when you're photographing and you find that things aren't quite in focus, make sure to check your aperture that you're getting exactly what you want in focus. If you're looking to blow things out of focus in the background, then try using a shallower depth of field with something like f4 or f2.8. And if you're looking to get lots of things in focus, like in a landscape photograph, consider using something like f8 to f11. Now the final thing to check is that you're staying completely still when you take the photograph. Often I see lots of people holding their cameras like this. Maybe they've come from using an iPad or a phone and now they've got a camera, and you need to be holding it slightly differently. Make sure that you're bringing one hand in under your lens and the other hand comes round to hold the grip. This will make sure that you've got a steady frame for when you're taking the photo, minimizing any shake or vibration when you press the shutter. At least control how still you are. You can't control how still other people or animals, etc. are in your frame, but you can control how still you are. So make sure you're concentrating on being as still as possible when you take the picture. Mistake number 5, and that's understanding and manipulating light direction. Now it really doesn't matter what kind of camera you're using. A point and shoot, a DSLR, your phone, it really doesn't make a difference. Understanding where light is coming from will completely change your photography forever. Paying attention to if light is being cast in this direction on someone's face, then shadows have to be coming out this way. The same as looking at me right now. I've got a light source in front of me here, and it's casting the shadows behind me, which is creating quite an even facing light. Whereas if you're photographing a sunset and the sun is setting behind your scene, you'll find that everything becomes silhouetted because everything has a shadow towards the camera. Knowing this and manipulating this by where you stand and where you place your subjects will completely change your photography. Make sure next time you're going out of your camera, you're just paying attention to where the brightest light sources are. What's lighting your scene? Where is it casting shadows? And then adjusting yourself based upon that. Light shapes people, light shapes your scene, and light is inevitably responsible for your photography. So make sure you're paying attention to it. That's all for today's video. If you like what you heard and you think it was helpful, please consider subscribing or even leave a like on this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.